Well, it was a great village when I was a boy growing up because you had a hardware shop, you had a forge, you had a chemist, 6 pubs, 3 draper shops, which you haven't got today. You know, everything was catered for.
It was really what made the money here was the fair days and the days round it. You had 3 or 4 houses down there doing teas in it, and you had all types of ones in second-hand clothes, selling second-hand clothes out on the street. You had a dentist, they used to call him a dentist, you see, and he used to set up in the Bush Bar here in the wee room. And he had a sign up, 2 shillings with paying, you see, and 5 shillings without paying. And the difference, you see, between the 2 shillings and the 5 shillings was he bought 3 shillings worth of whiskey and sort of acted as sort of an anaesthetic tea. You know, when you drank this whiskey, there was a lot of whiskey that time for 3 shillings. But you had no pain.
And then you went to school and it rained and you had Wellingtons and you dumped the water out of them and sat all day. And there was a big fire and the teacher clocked over the fire and we got no heat. But it didn't do us any harm. Some of it was nice and some of it was horrible. We had bad witches and we had lovely girls as well. And one of the really cross ones asked us to pray. She was going to America. We said novenas and it worked. We got rid of her. We had lovely teachers after that.
There'd be no rainbow here, or there'd be no hall. It was just John McGivern's courage to set it up. And he started off here in 1934 with a small hall. He was a local man, and he went over and spent a few years in New Jersey, sorry. And he was always interested in sort of showman's type stuff. It was always his ambition that he'd come back when he'd have enough money, come back here and build a little hall, which he did. And he would sing, while they were dancing, he would sing theirs, like Have You Ever Been Lonely, or some of Jim Reeves' romantic songs. And that would last for 10, maybe 15 minutes. And he called that his romantic interlude. So he realized then that some marriages were evolving from the fact that this romantic interlude, and people said, yeah, they did meet here. So he added on to it then the Ballroom of Romance. And that's how it got the name, because those romances started here.
You know, it wasn't a very user-friendly type of a road to school because there was travellers camped on the side of the road and there was no threat to travellers, but they'd have dogs, old terriers and greyhounds, and they'd always have a few horses. And the tinker's horse wouldn't be eaten along the side of the road, he'd be eaten with across the road. You know, his arse on one side and his head in the ditch. And a job to get him to move. And he wouldn't want to be moved, and he could put back his lugs and more or less go to places. You were afraid to go in front of him because he could go bite you, and if you went behind him, he could throw his heels at you.
This particular man from Belcoo was a good smuggler, but he was a lazy kind of a smuggler. He always took the easy way out. So he had a bag of tea to come from Belcoo to Black Lion. He was coming up the railway, he'd cross the Red Bridge, come out in and into Black Lion village. The tip for the tea was one of the local pubs in Black Lion village. He met a B-man. And the B-man was he'd be a kind of a half policeman, we say. You remain like they were junior policeman or whatever. So the B-man was armed, on duty, watching the railway because there was a lot of smuggling done on the railway. So a man shouted a man to the best of his ability, and during the course of the conversation he got the gun of him. So he said, "My good man, now," he says, "I'm throwing the gun in the river and you go home and I'm going on meet hay." But the B-man cried and he pleaded with him to give him back the gun, and he says, "No one will ever know I met you. I have a wife and 3 children. If I go back without the gun, I'll lose my job, I have nothing to live on." So the man that was smuggling was a decent man, and he thought the other man was a decent man, so he gave him back his gun. So he headed for Black Lion with his bag of tea. But when he landed at Black Lion with his bag of tea, the Southern Customs were waiting for him and took away the bag of tea. So that little story in itself, it shows you that he was let down by thrusting. So we were always taught trust people. So when you hear stories like that, it's very hard to trust everyone.